Tonight's newsmaker knows better than most the challenges of protecting us from terror attacks. Michael Chertoff has seen the Homeland Security system from the inside, running the department from 2005 until January this year. Tonight, he weighs in on the failures that left us so close to disaster on Christmas Day. Take a listen. Joining me right now from Washington, Michael Chertoff, who was Homeland Security Secretary for President George W. Bush. Mr. Secretary, welcome to you. Over the last 24 hours, as I think you know, it's become pretty apparent there was a massive failure by so many of the systems that were put in place post 9/11. Are you surprised by just how much was missed here?
Well, I don't think we have the full picture of exactly what was available, how clear it was, how precise it was. So I don't want to rush to judgment. I think that, the administration is now looking at all the leads that came in, trying to evaluate whether they were clear, and if so, whether they were properly integrated. And so it probably makes sense to wait until we have an accurate picture as opposed to what appears to be a dueling series of leaks.
Well, that said, I think we do know, I think the president has said very explicitly that there was a pretty big communication breakdown here among various sectors or various parts of the bureaucracy, if you want to describe it that way. I mean, when you left the federal government a year ago, did you think that these problems had been fixed?
Well, we found during the time I was there that we had a very good information sharing system. It was linked together with communications. We have computers. We created a National Counterterrorism Center. So the basic structure has been there for quite some time. I think what the current administration is going to be looking at is, was there human failure, either in the initial reporting or in the initial decision about what would be set up, the chain of communication, or in the ultimate determination by the intelligence community about whether this was significant enough to warrant preventing this person from getting on an airplane.
Well, what the president said, though, was systemic failure, bigger than one guy dropping the ball, or at least from what he seems to know, and presumably he knows more than any of the rest of us. So talk me through some of the specifics, given what we know. How do you think the system should have worked?
Here's the way it should work and normally does work. You get all kinds of intelligence or information from the field. Some of it is very unreliable or questionable. Some of it is much more reliable. Whatever it is, it has to be written up in a report and sent by a reports officer up the chain to headquarters. And then through the National Counterterrorism Center, which is the agency set up a few years ago by Congress to collect and integrate all the information. All the various scraps of information are brought together, and then an evaluation has to take place. Is it reliable? Is it specific? Does it suggest that some action has to be taken? And then, of course, if it is sufficiently specific and reliable, action should be taken. So at any point along that chain, people have the responsibility for making sure that they are accurately and fully reporting what they've learned. And then there are going to be some judgments that have to be made about whether and what action ought to be taken based on the information.
Bigger picture, what do we do to protect ourselves? Clearly, the systems in place didn't work if somebody was able to get that far in the process. When we talk about screenings at the airport and other protective mechanisms along the way, what should we be doing that clearly we're not?
Well, Campbell, the strategy recognizes that there's always going to be human error in any system. You can't count on perfection. And that's why we built a strategy at the Department of Homeland Security of what we call layered security, a number of different layers, so that even if one fails, another one gets picked up. It's complicated here, of course, because the actual screening took place overseas, where the U.S. ability to control what goes on is obviously not the same as it is here. But there are a few things we could do to make things better. First, we could deploy the scanning machines that we currently are beginning to deploy in the U.S. that would give us the ability to see what someone has concealed underneath their clothing. That has been vigorously opposed by the ACLU and privacy advocates. The House of Representatives voted to prevent us from using it. But I think now there's been a very vivid lesson in the value of that machinery.
Okay, can I stop you there for a second? I know you've been an advocate of this technology for a long time.
Correct.
But just in the interest of full disclosure, I also want to point out in your current role as a security consultant, you are representing some of the companies who manufacture that technology, correct?
Absolutely correct, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Second thing is, it apparently is the case the British did revoke the visa for this individual earlier this year. That information may not have been communicated to American authorities. Why is that? Because the European Union has been very, very adamant in refusing to share information about immigration problems that they discover with American authorities. So we've got to go back to the EU and fight this fight all over again and tell them that they're exalting privacy over security could very well have resulted in a tragedy that would have killed Europeans as well as Americans. So that's another measure we could put into place to help cure this problem. Third thing is we're going to have to go back and see whether we need to light a fire under some of the people involved in the reporting process to make sure that they move with urgency and with accuracy when they get reports of the kind that we saw apparently came into the Nigerian embassy.
There has also been a renewed debate about racial profiling here. I know you have been opposed to this, and it's not for civil liberties reasons, or not only, I guess, for civil liberties reasons, but largely because you don't think it's effective. Explain your reasoning.
Well, the problem is that the profile many people think they have of what a terrorist is doesn't fit the reality. Actually, this individual probably does not fit the profile that most people assume is the terrorist who comes from either South Asia or an Arab country. Richard Reed didn't fit that profile. Some of the bombers or would-be bombers in the plots that were foiled in Great Britain don't fit the profile. And in fact, one of the things the enemy does is to deliberately recruit people who are Western in background or in appearance so that they can slip by people who might be stereotyping. So I think the danger is we get lulled into a false sense of security if we profile based on appearance. What I do think is important is to look at behavior, and that's something that we are doing and should continue to do more of.
We're going to take a quick break, but in a moment I'll ask Chertoff what he thinks of his successor, Janet Napolitano. I'll also ask him about Dick Cheney's new war of words with the White House when we come back.